We're here in this surreal environment with somebody who has a lot to say about the Ottoman kitchen. Mary Işin, my very, very dear friend, who has written 14 books, but you have two others that are...
Two of them are translations of an English version and the Turkish version.
Okay. You've given your life to this, the kitchen, the Ottoman kitchen.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating. Just, you begin and then you find yourself in places that you never dreamed that you would find.
Well, I mean, I look at these books and I have read a couple of them, I have to say, because I think they're so interesting and there's so much information inside. You were telling me that you actually go into the archives of the Ottoman Empire archives and get information that's real?
Yeah, I mean, you can go, I've been to the archives. I mean, I can't read very old documents in very complicated scripts, but I do use a lot of documents with a fairly basic knowledge. And of course, a lot of also researchers publish a lot of documents, so I can use that as well.
So you were saying that everything was documented about what people ate, actually.
There is an awful lot of documentation, although there are very few recipe books really, relatively, especially when you compare to, say, Germany or England and France. They had a lot of cookery books going way back. And but in Turkey there's so many, there's one cookery book from the 15th century, and then you get medical books, because here people, you got better by eating the right things. It was very much a food-based medicine.
I want to just go back to the soup kitchens that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Now, soup is kind of like a staple in the Turkish kitchen. I mean, apparently it comes from the Ottomans, from what I just heard from you.
I don't know how much, I think, soup they had in a lot of cuisines.
But I mean, we have soup in the morning. We can have soup in the morning.
Yeah.
We have cold soup, hot soup. We have for lunch, dinner. You can have it in the middle of the night. You can have. I mean, I don't know how many types of soup we have, but I can imagine it to be hundreds.
It must be hundreds. And there are menus dating from the 17th century in the palace. And these aren't fancy banqueting menus. They're just the regular menus for, let's say, the government officials who had to eat at the palace on those days. So they're just 5 courses, always one sweet, often 2 soups in one meal.
Oh.
Very often.
I wanted to ask you about the fruit. I mean, pitted fruit is kind of, Turkey is world famous for all of its pitted fruits and nuts. But there's an awful lot of it in the kitchen.
Yes, there is. I mean, fruit is very important, whether it's raw or whether it's cooked, but especially raw fruit. And people were such keen gardeners, I mean, if you were a poor person with just maybe a tiny garden, you grew fruit. And the Sultan was keen on fruit growing, poets were keen on fruit growing. It was the thing they chatted about, and they exchanged grafts of good.
I think they still chat quite a lot about.
Yeah, I'm sure if people are into, growing and grafting their own fruit trees and exchanging, scions, you cut off the scion to graft. And it was such a big thing. And Sultan Mehmet, his father was a big fruit grower. He planted thousands of trees in the gardens of the palace in Edirne before the conquest of Istanbul. And he wrote a book of advice to his son, and he describes there about how he visits the fruit trees, how people that he helped him when he was planting them with my own hands, he says. They're still alive. I go and see my friends in the garden, and I pick the fruit off the trees that have grown now in a very sentimental way. And he, of course, went in because he built a huge lot of buildings. It's a huge new organisation. The city is reorganised, and he wants to encourage farmers and nursery gardens to produce enough food for the city. He brings in many new people to populate areas, and so he encourages, provides even equipment, like seeds, animals, that kind of thing, tools, and he plants thousands of trees in the palace gardens in Istanbul, especially fruit trees.
What do you think the most important top 3 things that the Ottoman kitchen really brought to the world?
Number one is baklava, because it was obviously it was perfected. It was perfected in the homes of the elite, because it was a luxury dish. You know, it takes a lot of expertise to make so many layers so thin like paper.
What do you think the second most important?
The second has to be coffee, I suppose.
Oh, my favorite topic.
Yes, because although coffee itself, of course, came from the Yemen, that was where it grew originally, and then the Arabs took it up as a drink, and then the coffee houses began in Syria. So again, it wasn't an Ottoman. What the Ottomans did was they took on coffee and they made it into a ritual.
Yes.
So coffee meant hospitality, and you had your finest, beautiful china is coffee cups. Everything to do with coffee was beautifully decorated, engraved, carved. So, and they turned coffee into an event, like an experience, you know. I read this is an Ottoman historian, she's German, and she studies the 17th century, especially palace documents. And she discovered a very interesting document. I only read it last year, but I think she published about 3-4 years ago. This is 17th century. They were putting ice in their coffee.
Wow.
Yes, I mean, that is just incredible. So she found in this document there's orders saying, and it's only for the very upper, the Sultan's favourite wives. And
they were drinking iced coffee.
They were drinking
iced coffee.
In the 17th century. In the 17th century. Isn't
I love this. Where were they getting the ice?
Oh, they had tons of ice, because still in Turkey today you can buy ice that's brought down from the mountains. So it can be ice cut from, let's say, a stream or and
they would bring it in.
But the main source of ice was in the mountains, and they still have them apparently in Turkey today. So they had snow collectors.
So the third, what do you think most important
the third,
thing?
well, it has to be doner kebab.
Doner.
Doner kebab was invented in the 16th century, because very early in the 17th century, from 1610, we have miniature pictures of picnics, and a cook is preparing doner kebab, but this is the horizontal doner kebab.
laying down this way.
The doner. Later it became the upright version. That was when it became commercialized. So if this was a picnic food, a luxury picnic food, and it was cooked horizontally, and as it cooked they slice off the meat, and so this was quite an elite dish.
Doner was elite at that time.
Elite at this time.
Now it's street food,
and then
basically.
and then it turned into a street food, and it became such so ubiquitous from the sort of late 18th century onwards that foreign tourists who've travelled, especially in Istanbul, to them, when they're talking about kebab,
that's all they talk about.
That's all they talk
when
about.
in fact kebab means anything that's cooked on the
and
the fire, right?
It's quite hard to find descriptions of shish kebab, because when you read their descriptions, they're all talking about doner kebab.
Yeah.
And of course it's delicious, and they loved it, and the Turkish people loved it, and we still love it here.
Well, thank you so much, Mary. This has been such an amazing conversation.
I enjoyed it so much.
And I love that we've kind of like set a few of the misunderstandings, let's say, about several of the Ottoman Empire's influences into gastronomy.
Yeah, it's lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much.